Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative and the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security, I'm honored to welcome you to today's event, Securing the Eastern Flank, a Baltic Agenda for the 2024 NATO Summit. My name is Jenna Ben-Yehuda, and I'm Executive Vice President here at the Atlantic Council. Since last year's summit in Vilnius, Lithuania, the security dynamics on NATO's eastern flank have undergone a truly significant transformation. The implementation of new defense strategies, substantial increases in defense spending, and of course the historic accession of Sweden and Finland have solidified the Baltic Sea as a NATO lake. However, persistent Russian aggression against Ukraine demands unwavering vigilance and a reinforced commitment to regional security. The upcoming NATO summit here in Washington, just 5 weeks out, I believe, presents a pivotal moment to reinforce and build upon the progress achieved since last summer. This summit is an opportunity, an important one, to fortify our collective security measures and deliver a decisive and united message to Moscow in the face of ongoing war in Ukraine. So with less than 5 weeks to go until the summit, we're really honored to welcome the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian permanent representatives to NATO, who together and individually have been true champions of security in cooperation in the region. For the Baltic countries located on NATO's strategically important but also vulnerable eastern flank, the Russian threat looms large and is a persistent one, and the need for strong deterrence, collective deterrence, is great. As frontline states confronting the reality of Russian hostility on their borders, the Baltic states have really demonstrated how vital they are to securing peace and stability for the entire alliance, and as some of the most forward-leaning supporters of Ukraine as it resists Russia's brutal invasion. So this event will delve into the defense priorities of these Baltic nations and articulate their vision for NATO's trajectory beyond its 75th anniversary, which it celebrated in April of this year. And convenings such as this are integral to the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security, which seeks to develop sustainable, nonpartisan strategies to address the most important security challenges facing the U.S. and the world. The center, of course, honors General Brent Scowcroft's legacy of service and embodies his ethos of nonpartisan commitment to the cause of security, support for U.S. leadership and cooperation with allies and partners, and dedication to the mentorship of the next generation of leaders. As a part of this mission, the Scowcroft Center's Transatlantic Security Initiative shapes and influences the debate on the greatest security challenges facing the North Atlantic Alliance and its key partners. So today's event is part of a broad trajectory of the Atlantic Council's programming organized in the run-up to the 2024 NATO Summit here in Washington. The Atlantic Council, together in partnership with 4 other leading think tanks, will form the consortium that will host the NATO Public Forum. This official event will unfold alongside the summit and provide a vital platform for discussion and analysis. Today's discussion will be moderated by Rachel Rizzo, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Thanks so much for being with all of us here today. And with that, Rachel, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Thank you for those opening remarks and for giving us an overview of the Baltic security region, the Transatlantic Security Initiative, and what we'll be talking about here today. As Jenna mentioned, my name is Rachel Rizzo. I'm a non-resident senior fellow here at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center, and I'm honored to moderate today's discussion on securing the Eastern Flank, a Baltic agenda for the 2024 NATO Summit. Before we get into the conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit to our audience in the room, but also online. We'll be following the hashtag StrongerWithAllies on X. There's a live broadcast on Atlantic Council TV. And for those that aren't in the room, I know we have an audience of many people watching online. Just hop over to askac.org. and submit your questions. I have this trusty iPad right here in front of me so I can see the questions that you're submitting, and I'll be sure to incorporate those into the conversation. So with that, getting into substance, we have celebrated two very important NATO milestones this year. The first was in April, the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance, which will celebrate officially next month, just 5 weeks from now, here in Washington at the NATO Summit. But also the three Baltic nations, you've also reached your own milestone, 20 years of NATO membership, and the contribution that you have made to transatlantic security is invaluable. So what we need now, looking ahead at the NATO summit, is really a Washington summit that delivers, and all eyes are going to be on the allies to deliver this summit that reaffirms transatlantic unity, strengthens collective commitments to security, but also demonstrates NATO's ability to not just defend every inch of its territory, but to transform itself into a multi-domain powerhouse equipped for the future battle space. So we have the perfect panel to discuss this today. The three Baltic Permanent Representatives to NATO. My distinguished panelists include the Estonian Ambassador to NATO, Jüri Luik, Lithuanian Ambassador Deividas Matulionis, and Latvian Ambassador Maris Rikštins. Together, we're going to explore the regional security environment and dive deep into Baltic priorities for the summit. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started with Ambassador Luik to sort of kick us off with a sense of the threat perception and the sense of security in the Baltic region. We've, for those of us who have spent time in the Baltics, and I know many people in this room have, you really get a sense, a palpable sense of the Russian threat just miles away. And so I wanted to talk to you sort of about what has been happening in your region and how you would evaluate the current security situation in the Baltic region, especially in light of Russia's full-scale invasion of 2022. Ambassador, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel, for this introduction, and very happy to be back in the Atlantic Council. I've had, throughout the years, very good cooperation with you. Let me start by saying that our three Baltic ambassadors, we came to Washington to get a feel of what Washington thinks about the Washington Summit. And obviously, the United States, being a key pillar of the alliance, plays a crucial role. Opinions here in Washington play a crucial role on what the final communique will look like and other decisions. We will be negotiating this communique, so it's interesting to know what the views are. But looking from our point of view, I would start by saying that we are somewhat saddened that somehow often folks mention the Baltic states as, quote unquote, most at risk. Mm-hmm. We don't see it that way, because while we appreciate that Baltic states are more difficult to defend because of our defensive depth, because of logistical challenges, et cetera, we always underline that we are part of the alliance. It's a unified alliance. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we have made enormous efforts in strengthening eastern flank and the Baltic states in particular. So I think in that sense, we are in the right path. In Madrid, we decided that the new concept of defense of allies is the so-called forward defense. Mm-hmm. Forward defense demands a lot of assets, a lot of structures, which would be placed in a different way as compared to what we had previously. So I think this is a work in progress, and it's going pretty well. We can go to details about particular, I don't know, troops issues. But more importantly, the key to deterrent for the Baltic states is really the Western assistance to Ukraine. We believe that if Ukraine wins, the NATO deterrent power will be significantly enhanced. If Ukraine loses, then on the contrary, NATO would look weak. And as we all know, in the deterrent game, it is all about how you look. And this is really the reason why supporting Ukraine is an existential issue for the Baltic states. And we have really done a lot to support them. Now, we are all 3 countries which are relatively small, but we have tried to be the icebreakers in encouraging other countries to bring in more assistance. And here, of course, the United States, again, plays a very, very crucial role. Now, Russia has also another tool in their disposal, and obviously the general atmosphere in the region has changed because of the Russian full-fledged aggression and the fact that finally Russia has shown its true intention. Now, you know, the Balts have always warned that Russia is a huge risk factor. We were not always believed, and we tried to avoid this, we were right, because first, nobody likes to hear that, and second, I mean, we don't take any joy in the fact that we were right. But what Russia does in our region, in NATO, is really using the hybrid tools. Not only in the Baltic states, far from it. They are using hybrid tools in the UK, in Germany, in many other countries. And their new approach really is, okay, we cannot take them militarily, but we can create a lot of trouble inside the Allied territories. And you know, they have upped their game. It is not anymore cyber attacks or propaganda attacks. It's already sabotage. It's already killings. Estonia has also arrested a number of operatives, simple people who were given tasks from Moscow to fulfill very simple but very damaging tasks. So basically, it's a new, rougher, rawer, very, very unpleasant approach. And I think we are still grappling in what we can do in response, how to deter this kind of internal actions, internal activities.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ambassador, I'd like to turn to you, Ambassador Rikstins, to sort of build upon some of the comments that Ambassador Luik has made. You said that we need, in response to Russian aggression, but also continued Russian hybrid provocations in the region, we need a lot of assets, we need a lot of structures, and you said that we as an alliance are sort of still grappling with how to actually handle those increased provocations. Ambassador, can you talk a little bit about how the presence of NATO allies and NATO equipment has changed in the Baltic region over the last 5 or 6 years, especially since 2022, and has it been enough?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for hosting us here for this conversation. I can only join my Estonian colleague expressing our appreciation for that. I mean, this is less than 5 weeks to go till Washington Summit, and I think it's the right time to take stock about where we are and what should be done or accomplished in the remaining time till the summit. Perhaps I would start a little bit of kind of retrospect in a sense that to continue the point made by Yuri, that in fact these changes in our region or caused by Russian actions came not as a surprise to us. If you look in retrospect, starting from 2003, Putin's this favorite announcement about the biggest geopolitical tragedy of the last century, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then Munich speech, and then war in Georgia, and then Crimea, annexation of Crimea in 2014. So what happened in 22 for us, I think it was not a major surprise. It was kind of a bad development, definitely, because the start of the war is a bad development. It means that diplomacy doesn't work. But It was not a surprise. It was an eye-opener to a number of allies, and all decisions taken after the start of the full-scale invasion definitely were in order to address the growing threats coming from Russia. So when it comes particularly to our region, I think as a result of these developments during the last few years, we have, I would say, on a positive note, we have more clarity. We don't have any gray zones left in the Baltic region since Finland and Sweden joined the alliance. So that means more clarity when it comes to the planning process of different defenses during different possible scenarios. We can go in details later on. What does it mean for deterrence and what that means for defense? We have clarity about the security landscape. At the same time, we have also more Russian malign actions, activities, also in our region, but not only in our region. I would very much support the notion used by Yuri that, I mean, we are not that happy in our region when Baltic states are being considered as kind of specific case within NATO, because in our strong belief is since NATO's success as the most successful defense alliance for the last 75 years was based, first of all, on the principle of unity. And that unity, even in a situation that the nations used to have different opinions on this or on that subject, that unity was the pillar in order to bring peace to our nations during those 75 years. And I'm sure that also when it comes to our region, when it comes to the security of the Baltic states, in case of crisis or in case of conflict, I have no doubt that the rest of the allies will come and support our activities. So about defense forces or additional capabilities in our region, as it was mentioned already, we have plans in place. We have the decisions regarding C2, necessary improvements in place. Summit will listen to the reports about how far we have progressed in that process. Definitely there are certain capability gaps, and we are doing our national homework in that sense. Also, we can talk about that in more in details. In all of our nations, we have multinational contingents led by different nations. In case of Latvia, that's Canada. In the leading position, we have 12 nations contributing to that effort. And it also gives more clarity that we are part of the alliance. And I think that clarity, this is important for both, for our adversaries, but also for our own publics, because they have to feel, and they feel that NATO is there, that NATO is addressing seriously the current security challenges. And in my personal point of view, I mean, we have to focus more on deterrence and then on defense. Deterrence will work if we will have in place sufficient capabilities, but also sufficient political will. Because if there are capabilities but no will to deploy those capabilities, then the deterrence doesn't work. And if there is will without capabilities, then again, deterrence will not work. So I would say that in a run-up to the Washington summit, I'm pretty optimistic about the outcome of the summit. Since I'm for the second time at NATO, and this is going to be, I think, 9th summit for me. I think that we are in a pretty good shape so that we can reach consensus on the most important issues for the alliance.
That's a positive note to end your opening remarks on. But I'd like to come to you, Ambassador Matulionis, to sort of build on those remarks. You've talked about this principle of unity. You've talked about, in the lead up to the summit, we have that unity of vision. And what's interesting about that is that for the first time ever, Sweden is going to be sitting at the table as a full-fledged member, finally. So we now have an alliance of 32. And one thing that you hear about the accession of Finland and Sweden into the NATO alliance is that it sort of brings about more geographic coherency to the Baltic region more broadly. You were mentioning that it's not right to think of the Baltics as a sort of a separate region. It's one alliance, and So I wanted to ask you about what the accession of Finland and Sweden into NATO means for the Baltic region, what that means for Nordic-Baltic cooperation, but also what it means for that unity of vision and for the alliance more broadly.
Thank you very much. I would like also to join my colleagues in thanking you, and also to say that we are here today and tomorrow in Washington also to hear American position. Before the summit, we still have time, and it's very important to know exactly what are the expectations from US, because without US position, of course, there will be no agreement at all in NATO Summit in Washington. But it's very important that 75 years passed, and we celebrate really this, the most successful defense alliance. And for Lithuania, you know, our first president, Vytautas Landsbergis, some time ago said, and this is already a known, metaphor, that for us, NATO is for life, EU is for better life. It means that it's extremely important for us to be member of NATO. And we remember our history, 1940, when we had been neutral countries, and then we were invaded by Soviets. Now, collective defense is really what we really trust, and we would like to see it develops. And after invasion of Russia into Ukraine, one of the results was, of course, Swedish and Finnish accession to NATO. Even I started 4 years ago in NATO's ambassador, and at the beginning it was still, difficult to believe that, especially Sweden will decide to join NATO. And then all of a sudden, both countries have decided to do it. And actually, this is really a positive side of the current geopolitical situation in our region. First of all, both Finland and Sweden have well-developed and balanced defense forces, both land forces, navy and air forces. And at the same time, we see that a certain consolidation of Nordic-Baltic cooperation in defense and security matters. And I hope we will continue in this respect. And Sweden, as Maris just mentioned, already decided to contribute with Swedish forces to Latvia. In our case, we also hope that Sweden will contribute to air policing, also bringing some additional, security into the functioning of the Baltic Sea, not the Baltic Sea region, but Baltic Sea, because Sweden has a strong navy. And Finland, we should never forget that Finland has probably the most extensive, most developed reserve system, and they have well-developed, probably we can, all of us, learn from Finland on how to develop resilience policy in all aspects. It means that those two countries will definitely enrich NATO and will increase security in our region. We have some issues on the agenda, how to divide regional, responsibility, under which regional headquarters, but this is a minor issue. In principle, this is a positive side of the current situation, and we're really happy, and we hope that we will continue. And one more point is that probably in due time, Suwałki corridor will not remain as only option of possible reinforcement. We count on additional reinforcement possibilities from the Baltic Sea through Swedish territory, and that could be also a very important additional element increasing our deterrence capabilities.
If I may just to add a few sentences, I think that the Swedish and Finnish membership, that means for the deterrence, it means that there will be more allied assets in the air, on land, and the sea domains. It's better situational awareness, and rightly David has said about in case of a crisis or conflict, the flexibility for potential reinforcements, necessary reinforcements, is much broader. Because, I mean, always, and also in the public domain, there is this ongoing discussion about what will happen in case of, I mean, Suwalki, etc. So especially Swedish membership provides more clarity also on that thing. As I said, for defense planning processes, that's essential.
What about, I might ask you this question, U.S. presence in particular, the importance of it in the region. We're the framework nation for the NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence multinational battalion in Poland. But a few of us here have visited Leeuwarden in Latvia, and strong U.S. presence in the Baltics it seems agreed upon that this is key for Baltic security. How important is U.S. presence, and what does that mean, U.S. engagement in the Baltic region more generally? What does that mean for Baltic security?
Oh, it's immensely important because, I mean, let's be honest, the United States still provides the backbone of defense forces for collective defense. It's not an accident that SECURE and US SOCOM commander are the same people, so-called double-hatted. Obviously, European countries are doing a lot. As colleagues said, European countries are framework nations, both in Lithuania and Estonia, UK in Estonia. But of course, the United States provides specific and unique capabilities, first. But second, US presence on our soil is also a strong indicator of US military, but in particular political commitment. It is obvious that you cannot put a US division, or let's say it's highly unlikely that you would put a US division in the Baltic states. I think it is evident that the presence is smaller by size. In Estonia, for instance, it's one light infantry battalion, and the central bulk of U.S. forces is actually situated, of course, in Poland. But the presence is important. On the other hand, when it comes to actual defense, then it is obviously also important that the United States can provide certain capabilities like long fires, which most of the other countries cannot do, especially in the mass which is necessary. I mean, it's very important to see how Russia plays on this massive sort of amount of troops, the volume of troops, if you will, not very well trained, not very well armed, but simply the massive amounts of them. So you actually need large, credible capabilities to fight Russia. And of course, if we are talking today that Finland is a member now, Sweden is a member now, it provides additional options to support the Baltic states. Then let's also be very honest, the troops which would come through Sweden and through Finland will most likely be mainly US troops, which come some from the mainland of the United States, some perhaps from other parts of Europe. And of course, the United States has a very, very capable Air Force. And also, you have a very strong deterrent power. For instance, the US Bomber Task Force, which is in Europe, they are doing rounds almost regularly all over the Baltic airspace. And this is very important. I mean, this is another dimension which indicates that the huge nuclear power is actually a very integral part of the alliance capabilities.
On this, if I may, we just concluded the biggest NATO exercise, the Steadfast Defender, which was, 92,000 troops exercise. Because one thing is to have capabilities in place, but the second thing is equally important to have them prepared, I mean, exercising them. And one of the elements of the exercise was exactly how, I mean, bringing American additional forces across the ocean being deployed in different theaters in Europe. So I think, but when it comes to significance of the U.S. forces in our region, I can only concur what Yuri said.
If I could add also, in our case, we also can boast that we have American presence, and on the rotational basis, we have U.S. Heavy Mechanized Battalion close to the border of Belarus, only 20 kilometers from the border, in Pabradi region, and around between 600 and 800 troops. And I 100% agree with Yuri that American presence, smaller or bigger, it's the strongest deterrent factor, because you should understand the psychology of Russians. In principle, Russians respect American troops. They do not respect any other troops in NATO. Only America is respected. Of course, it's very important to have NATO troops, and we hope that in our case, Germany will continue, and until beginning of 2027, we'll have a full-fledged permanent installation German brigade in Lithuania. It's also a historical step, we have to admit that, but still we have some way to go, because we need to ensure our host nation support, what is necessary for this permanent stationing, and also for Germany, they also need resources and need to collect the whole brigade to be stationed in Lithuania. And this is another element, which is not only important for Lithuania, but it's important for Baltic states. Everything what is in Allied presence in 3 Baltic states, I mean, we can sum up, this is an additional deterrent factor for all of us, not only for Lithuania, or for example, Canadian forces, not only for Latvia, and UK forces for Estonia. It shows willingness of the alliance to defend Baltic states.
Thank you. So we've talked about Baltic security specifically. I want to expand the aperture a little bit and talk about the reason why the 3 of you are here in Washington. We have a very important NATO summit coming up here in 5 weeks. It's 75 years of this alliance helping to ensure peace on the European continent. That peace, I think, feels pretty hard to grasp if you're a Ukrainian and have been fighting back against Russia's full-scale invasion, not just for the last 2.5 years, but really for the last almost decade at this point. So I would ask of all of you, what does a successful NATO summit look like? Not just in terms of alliance unity, but in terms of this bridge for Ukraine that we keep hearing about, this institutionalization of NATO support for Ukraine that we keep hearing about. And what are you hoping to hear from your meetings over the next couple of days from U.S. leaders? Ambassador Luik, I might start with you on the easy question here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say that the success or the failure of the Washington summit will not so much be related to the 75th anniversary. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nice, it's important, we're celebrating, but it cannot be only a celebratory summit, because I think the strength of NATO has always been that it has responded to the prevailing security threats, and this is certainly the time to do that now. I think Ukraine will be the key issue. Mm-hmm. And it's not only about what structures we build or what language we use in the communique, but more importantly, it's what kind of assistance, practical assistance, are we ready to provide to Ukraine today and in the foreseen future. The problem is, or the challenge is, that obviously if something bad happens on the front, if there will be a Russian breakthrough, for instance, and God forbid, I hope it won't happen, I mean, we cannot speak of a successful summit. Whatever else happens, this will, the situation on the field will determine very much the success. Also, the question of how much actual assistance are we ready to provide now? Ukrainians have quite justifiably asked for additional air defense. The air defense capabilities of various members, I might say, are running short. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as Secretary General Stoltenberg says, we have to dig deeper. Mm-hmm. And obviously countries who have more air defense capabilities should also provide more air defense assets. And certainly, not only the US, but many European countries, in particular Germany, has done a lot in providing Patriots, in providing missiles, and this work should continue. But if we talk about the desire, our desire to see Ukraine on the offensive, then obviously the mass of weapons we have to provide to Ukraine must even be increased. And if you will, the seriousness of our commitment must increase. And the fact that the United States, as well as European countries, have decided that Ukraine can, at particular circumstances, fire on the Russian territory, near Kharkov, for instance, I think this was a crucial decision to provide Ukraine even the option of trying to destroy the points of gathering, the points of concentration of US troops. So if we approach the summit with a list of very concrete good news of new things we are providing to Ukraine, then I have a feeling that this summit can be a celebratory in celebrating the success of Ukraine, the fact that Ukraine is doing well. Obviously, there will be some complex political issues which are part of the negotiations. For instance, how much of weapons deliveries would NATO take over from the so-called Rammstein group?
Yep.
It is a very complex issue. There are a lot of political sensitivities. What I would underline is that NATO as an organization doesn't have weapons anyway. So the question of should NATO provide weapons to Ukraine is a moot question. The weapons themselves always come from member states. NATO can facilitate the transfer of those weapons, but the weapons are still national weapons which are provided to Ukraine. Now, when these weapons are in Ukraine, the question is, should we underline so much that these are our weapons? I mean, we could underline the fact that these are now Ukrainian weapons. Because when we say to use our weapons, then you have this feeling of immense responsibility or kind of participation. But we are not, these are not in that sense our weapons. These are weapons which we have transferred to the Ukrainian authorities officially, and they are part of the Ukrainian own defense capabilities. So it also depends on an angle of how we look at these challenging issues.
Thank you. I might add an element to this question to make it maybe a little bit even more difficult. You mentioned that the weapons provided are national weapons, and the financial support that NATO allies provide is national financial support, national economic support. We had a pretty nasty battle on Capitol Hill over the last 7-8 months about this latest tranche of support for Ukraine. It finally passed. But in your sense, sort of relating this to the NATO summit, is there concern in Europe that the US may falter in terms of our continued support for Ukraine, meaning that the Europeans, the Baltics, who have been really leaders on this front in terms of support for Ukraine, may have to step up to the plate even more? And maybe what does that mean? Does that play into the summit at all? I'd be curious as to your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that the long-term financial support for Ukraine is going to be one of the most important issues for the summit. So the proposals which are currently floated by Secretary General about 100 billion for 2 years. So we will have to look into the details of the proposal or the draft decision. We would support from our countries. We would support very clearly measurable way of contributing to the Ukrainian military needs. For instance, in case of Latvia, we have already signed bilateral security agreement in which we have committed our financial support for Ukrainian military needs for next 3 years in the amount of 0.25%. Some of the nations are saying that this is too much. Secretary General has encouraged the countries to look deeper into their pockets, so to say, because there are calculations made that those 100 billion, if you look, I mean, for 2 years, which we have spent so far in assisting Ukraine, that makes basically 0.08% on average for the NATO member states. This is really insignificant amount of money. If we really realize that we are confronting the biggest security policy threat on European continent. American support is extremely important, but Europeans have to chip in more. And I think the Baltic states, we are kind of leading the way in that. But let's see what will be the final conclusion of the summit. But I agree, I mean, that's going to be one of the most important discussion points.
I can also add to this, in my view, when we try to prioritize what is important in Washington Summit, then of course Washington Summit will be measured successful or not successful, what package Ukraine gets, because in the public definitely Ukraine will dominate. And therefore it's very important to all of us, not only Baltic states, but also to probably United States, to have a really serious package which would be acceptable for Ukrainians, and we could show to Russians that our, capabilities and our willingness and political will is there, and we will continue for the long run. And Russians will understand that they will not outlast us and will not outlast Ukrainians. And therefore, I agree with Yuri and Maris that first of all we need to create a strong package of practical military assistance. Political statements never won the war. I mean, with political statements we can just encourage something, but war is not won by political statements. Therefore, if we would be able, all of us to bring, some package of air defense systems and artillery munitions and also F-16 before the summit, that would be really a very positive deliverable. First, and in my view, the most important deliverable. And the second most important deliverable, already colleagues alluded about that, this is financial commitment. Really, it's sometimes difficult to understand why it's so difficult to all allies to agree on some fair burden sharing to support Ukraine. Just we should remember all the time, for example, COVID recovery fund in the European Union, how much money we spend, billions of billions, and just not forget Afghanistan. Annually, we spent, Americans and all other allies, 100 billion annually for Afghanistan mission. Altogether, 2 trillion in 20 years. And it's so difficult now to collect 40 billion annually for Ukraine. It shows that we need to show political will and fair burden sharing in this respect. And then third priority, in my view, it's this, discussion how to proceed with the membership issue.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the most difficult, but anyway, we should be serious. If we will simply say that, we will continue and we will stick to the Vilnius summit decision, it's not serious. We should show that our commitment is serious, and Washington should demonstrate that. Whatever the formulation, we still discuss it. And then the fourth element is this idea of NATOization of military support. Yuri also mentioned about that. In principle, it will not change the balance, but it will send a strong strategic messaging to Russia that NATO is taking over of some, activities related to delivery of military, both lethal and non-lethal support. And if we are able to proceed with these 4 elements in a proper way, that would be really great success. Of course, there are some other issues which are very important, but in my view, Ukraine will dominate in the public sphere and also in mass media, and it's our duty to bring positive to Ukraine.
Thank you. One of the issues that came out of one of the developments, I guess, that came out of the 2023 Vilnius Summit were these new regional defense plans led by SACEUR General Chris Cavoli. These aren't the things that make really major headlines when it comes to deliverables, but they're really important to the functioning of the alliance and sort of built on the 2022 Madrid summit, this new force model that was adopted. I think this question can perhaps be for anyone that would like to answer it. Can you talk a little bit about the development of those new regional defense plans, and if NATO is ready to execute on them, and sort of the update that we might have between 2023 and today ahead of the NATO summit?
Well, I could start
Sure.
simply by saying that defense and deterrence will also be an important part of the Washington package. The problem is that most of these documents are not public.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to make it kind of a headline deliverable.
Yeah.
But just to succinctly put it, I would say that the executability of these plans is the crucial issue. And what does it mean? I mean, executability. The plans don't fight.
Mm-hmm.
People fight arms, structures, commands. So basically, you can have the best plan in the world, but if you don't have necessary troops, command, ammunition, then these plans are not executable. So if you have those, the plans are executable. So basically, the plans are very good. But now we are talking about the issue of how to find and how to produce more assets which would be capable of fulfilling those plans. And here is where the production capabilities of various Western countries come into play. How much can we ramp up the production of weapons, for instance? Now, at first, I would say I also thought of it in kind of layman's terms. You just kind of put another line in the factory and you just ramp it up. It's really, really very difficult, and it takes a long time. Most of the technically advanced weaponry is obviously not produced by one factory. It's not produced in one place. It's produced perhaps by, I don't know, 1,000 factories or different subcontractors. It's an immensely complicated issue, and obviously people who build the factories, people who produce these arms, are also very justifiably asking, look, you are all talking about increased need, we get that, but where are the contracts? Mm-hmm. I mean, we can make such huge investments to increase the production of technologically advanced weapons only if you show us the real money. Mm-hmm. Then let's talk about it.
Yeah. I wanted to, if you wanted to add anything.
I would like to
Please.
this issue because I agree with Yuri that we didn't mention before, but this defense industrial pledge will be one of the deliverables. And it will relate to the strong political will of the leaders, I mean, to increase and to boost our defense industry. And there will be some elements related to demand signal to the industry, and then to also stronger, I mean, efforts on standardization. It's also an issue of great concern. 50 years we were not able to solve it. And also encouraging multinational, multi-year contracts. And the fourth element probably will be related to national defense plans. I hope this will fly, and it's an important subject. And without that, of course, we will be facing with a lot of problems, because we are victims of the 30 years of peace dividend period. We, I mean, neglected our defense industry. Sorry to say that. And not we, in principle, the collective West. And also we neglected also our defense forces and decreased defense spending. And now we have to restore everything and to return to the collective defense. We used to have a period when we considered, just remember, 10 years ago, Russia was still a partner, not a threat. And we should not forget that, how situation has changed and what situation we are now. I mean, we need time to how to say, to reconstitute, to rebuild everything.
Yeah.
I think the leaders, they will listen to the report about the executability of the defense plans. Yuri is right on this. The plans doesn't fight, but they don't fight them in the war. I mean, we need capabilities and forces in place. I think it will be assessed where are the capability gaps, what can be done collectively and individually. And I think individually, Baltic states are doing our share. For instance, in Latvia, we have concluded agreements about additional air defense capabilities. For instance, one together with Estonia to buy these IRIS-T systems, then HIMARSes and naval strike missiles. So we understand that those are the urgent needs actually indicated by Sakyar in his report that, look guys, your nations, you have to focus on these specific capabilities because those are crucial in case of crisis.
Thank you. So I might turn to audience questions. We have a few on the iPad here, but also if anyone in the audience has them. I might start with the audience first. Go ahead and stand up at this microphone. We have about 7 or so minutes left, so let's make the questions snappy and make sure it ends in a question. Thanks.
You mentioned the increase of hybrid threats.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Carlos. I am a student at the University of Maryland of Latvian heritage.
Oh, awesome.
Excited for the NATO Summit this summer. My question is about the increase of hybrid threats. Obviously, they're difficult to defend given the asymmetric nature. But what is your strategy to defend and respond to hybrid threats?
That's a great question, because we also have that here on the iPad too. Does anyone want to take that one? Hybrid? Well, I mean, Estonia is the leader in especially on cyber, in terms of hybrid
Yeah,
threats.
I could just start by saying that, as I said, it's very difficult, but it's doable. I mean, most of these measures at the moment are not military, but they are mainly done by police, by security services. Obviously, you have to have a lot of information of what's going on in different parts of Europe. It's very important to exchange information with other allies, because some of this stuff is done in a very similar way in different parts of the alliance. It's also very important to be brave and quick, and if necessary, the means which we use, for instance, in cyber defense, we should, cyber defense is not just an abstract word. It needs a lot of investment. It needs a lot of preparation. If we are well prepared, we can really stop very serious cyber attacks. But also, we have to operate quickly when we gain information about various physical risks. As I said, Estonia has arrested a number of people, so have other countries. And we are dealing actually with stuff which was not there even during the Cold War. I mean, during the Cold War, we didn't hear about Russia sending or employing sabotage groups, essentially, to create havoc in different NATO member states. That wasn't MO at that time. So it is really kind of a brazen new world, and we should make a lot of efforts to fight that. Several countries have sent out Russian diplomats. Poland has just said that they are planning to limit the movement of Russian diplomats inside Poland. So there are a number of ways, but there is no silver bullet, of course.
I also would agree that there is no, I mean, kind of toolkit which is kind of ready for use for every possible scenario. But I think what is important that the information sharing among the allies is ongoing at these issues. Public awareness, that's a crucial thing. So to say, the government whole society approach. And what we have in Latvia in place, increasingly, I mean, strong interaction between the government institutions, Ministry of Defense, and municipalities. So we have certain areas, I would say, that we have achieved a good degree of a public understanding of the challenges, like in the field of disinformation and propaganda. But I'm sure that, unfortunately, I'm sure that there are going to be some new challenges coming in, and that will be a big issue for all of the allies.
I'm sure there will be.
I very quickly add that also the Allied open and public reaction is very important, because we had this strange incidents when suddenly the kind of request of the Russian Ministry of Defense appeared in the Russian government website, saying that the Ministry of Defense proposes to review the Russian borders in various parts of the Baltic Sea, the sea border. Then the stolen boys from the Estonian-Russian border. So there is a lot of stuff like that happening, and the fact that the alliance has publicly stood behind its allies and publicly shown its solidarity is very important.
Yeah, I agree with that, because this borders, I wouldn't say incident, but provocation, actually. This was disinformation attack. We understood that according to the Sea Convention, they have a certain right, to draw this line. But it was presented like, questioning the borderline of territorial waters between Lithuania and Russia. But at the end of the day, they withdrew that because of the criticism and all the statement of solidarity from allies, different countries. And this is very important. It has to be quick, and reaction should be quick. But besides that, of course, so-called diplomats working undercover. Actually, last probably several years, if I'm not mistaken, EU countries sent back to Russia 500 diplomats, GRU and SVR operatives under diplomatic cover. But still there are countries, our allies, partners in Europe, and they have, the concentration of those spies, they're very high. And then we need also to somehow gently speak with these countries to help them to get rid of this, because they are, this free movement, and they could easily go to neighboring countries. I don't want to mention concrete countries, but you understand what I'm thinking about. And then visa policy. We can screw a bit more our visa policy, and we have done it, Baltic states and Poland is doing. And also there is a sanction package. I still hope that we will manage. This is a very good French initiative, which could be supported. Of course, as always in the EU, there are some different opinions. Some countries are not very happy. But there are instruments, and it's very important to react and in a symmetric way. And then Russians will understand that continuation of these hybrid actions could have consequences. For example, one issue recent, there was an attempt of arson in IKEA, a shopping center in Lithuania. And it's more or less proven that it was, done by guys with GRU background. And it could continue. It's not only Lithuania. You know many cases in Poland and UK, and it could become, kinetic. Not simply, disinformation or cyber attacks, but which could endanger lives of the people.
I know we're out of time, but just one final, very quick question: are we going to be able to expect an announcement for a new Secretary General at the summit?
I'm pretty sure we will have a new Secretary General in the summit.
Good.
So
one more exciting thing to end on.
Our wish is that we have the name before the summit, so not to enter the summit without agreement.
So before the summit is the hope.
One of the summits I mentioned, I've been to, it was Strasbourg-Kiel, when Secretary General Rasmussen was kind of selected by the heads of state and government themselves sitting in the room. I don't believe that this is perhaps the way how this time the issue will be solved.
At least I agree with 100% with my colleagues. And we supported already a candidate. There is no problem for us. And I hope that we will not start discussing I mean, instead of discussing Ukraine and deterrence and defense, I mean, personality of future Secretary General during our summit in Washington.
We'll
That
see.
would be really a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare. Ambassador Luik, Ambassador Ikstins, Ambassador Matulionis, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your leadership, not just within the Transatlantic Alliance, but NATO more specifically, your defense spending, your leadership on NATO's eastern flank, and your willingness to engage with us. And we hope to see you here in Washington. Well, we will see you in Washington again next month, and best of luck on your meetings for the next couple of days here in DC. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.